What if I told you that before men walked the earth, before the stars were born, before even time itself, there was a place where gods ruled, not from the heavens, but from the soil, where the sun wasn't a ball of gas, but a god who sailed a golden ship across the sky, only to battle chaos every single night beneath the horizon, where death wasn't feared, but studied, sculpted, and conquered, step by sacred step, where magic wasn't fantasy, but law and names had such power, even the sun god was tricked into giving his away. This isn't a story from fantasy. This is ancient Egypt civilization that endured 3,000 years by making myth a living science, and their gods. They never truly died. Asterisk, Act 1. The birth of gods and the universe in the beginning. There was nothing, not even darkness, just none, a limitless, silent ocean of raw potential. From that watery chaos, a force awakened Adam. He rose, alone, atop the primeval mound, and from himself birthed the universe. With no partner, he brought forth Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, goddess of moisture. Then came Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. But earth and sky were locked in a lover's embrace. So Shu tore them apart, raising Nut into the heavens, pressing Geb down beneath. The space between became our world, the realm of humans, spirits, gods, and chaos. From this divine lineage came Osiris, Isis, Set, Nephthys, and Horus, the elder, and with them came a flood of stories that would shape the destiny of Egypt and echo across time. Egyptians didn't have one creation myth, they had many. Each city held its own cosmic origin. In Heliopolis, the universe began with Adam. In Memphis, with the god Ptah, who didn't use hands but speech. He thought the cosmos, then spoke it into being. Chaotic beings, half frogs, half serpents, giving birth to the cosmic egg that hatched the sun. These weren't contradictions. There were layers of truth, a belief that no single story could capture the divine. Act 2, Order V. CHAO. The struggle of gods among these divine beings. None mattered more than Osiris, the god of green life, fertility, civilization. He ruled earth with justice and wisdom alongside his queen and sister, Isis, the goddess of magic, motherhood, and healing. But where order thrives, chaos waits. Set, their brother, god of the desert, storms, and ambition, wanted the throne. At a great banquet, he unveiled a mysterious chest, promising it to whomever it fit perfectly. Osiris lay inside, and the lid slammed shut. They poured molten lead upon it, sealing it forever, and hurled the box into the Nile. But death was only The beginning. Isis, torn by grief, hunted across Egypt to recover Osiris's body. Set found it Aganda, tore it into 14 pieces, scattering them from delta to desert. Yet Isis did the impossible. Piece by piece, she gathered his remains. She crafted a new phallus from gold, and with divine words, she breathed him back to life, long enough to conceive their son, Horus. Horus grew in secret, shielded by spells raised among reeds, while Set ruled in tyranny. Then the war began, 80 years of celestial court battles, and even divine humiliation as Horus and Set clashed not just for a throne, but for the future of Mat itself. The principle of cosmic balance. In the end, Horus prevailed. He claimed the crown. Set was banished, and Osiris descended into the underworld as a ghost, but as its king. From then on, every living pharaoh was Horus reborn. Every dead pharaoh became Osiris. Act 3. The Sun's Nightly War and the Science of the Afterlife. But the gods weren't done. Above, the sun god Ra began his eternal cycle. By day, he shone as the great falcon-headed god, sailing his boat across the sky. But at dusk, Ra aged, and as night fell, he boarded his evening bark and entered the Duat underworld. There, he faced his greatest enemy, Apep, the chaos serpent, as long as the sky, who tried to devour the sun each night. And every night, Ra fought, him cutting, burning, and banishing the snake. But Apep never died. He returned, regenerated, coiling in the darkness, ready again to win. Ra merged with Osiris in the dead of night. Sun and death, light and shadow, creator and corpse. This union gave him the power to be reborn at dawn as Khepri, the scarab, god of becoming. This wasn't just myth, it was philosophy. Egyptians saw life as a cycle, and death, it wasn't the end. It was a journey. It was a journey. You were prepared. The soul wasn't a single thing. It was a network. The Ka, your life force. Ba, your personality. The Ren, your name. The Shoit, your shadow. And the Ak, the eternal spirit. To reach paradise, you had to pass trials, answer riddles, and face judgment in the hall of two truths. Your heart was weighed against the feather of Mat. If balanced, you passed into the field of reeds, and eternal Egypt with no famine or pain. Not Mit, the bone eater, devoured your heart, and you were erased forever. But there was hope magic. Books of the dead, amulets, spells, and secret names. Even Ra was once tricked by Isis into revealing his true name. With knowledge and righteousness, any soul could become a star. Or join Ra's. Bark. Act 4. The legacy gods who never died. Egyptians didn't separate science from religion, or life from the afterlife. The temples weren't places of worship alone. They were machines for sustaining the cosmos. Every offering, every ritual, every spell was an act of keeping the universe in balance. Even pharaohs weren't just kings. They were cosmic operators, divine conduits, walking gods. Their power wasn't in wealth. It was in their role as guardians of Matha, very blueprint of existence. Egypt's gods changed over millennia. They merged, evolved, were reborn. Amen became Amun-Ra. Horus merged with Ra. Ptah was fused with Seker. But through it all, the core belief remained. Order must be defended. Names hold power. Death can be overcome. And today, though the temples lie in ruins, and the gods no longer walk among us, their stories still do, because to speak their names is to make them live again. Asterisk in Egypt. Death was never the end. It was the next phase, a journey through darkness, guarded by spells, judged by truth, and mastered only by those who were ready. No civilization in history spent more time, more thought, or more art preparing for what came after. And the reason? Because they believed life could be made eternal if you knew the way. To the Egyptians, a person was not just flesh and soul. They were 5 sacred parts. The Ka, a double spirit that needed food, prayers, and shelter. The Ba, a bird-like being that traveled freely between worlds. The Ren, your name, without which you would vanish. Shoet, your shadow, spiritual imprint of your life. And finally, the Akur, radiant, immortal essence. But for these pieces to reunite in the afterlife, the body had to be preserved perfectly. So Egyptians invented mummification, a 70-day ritual of drying, wrapping, and enchanting. They removed the organs, placed them in sacred jars, guarded by the 4 sons of Horus, and wrapped the corpse with linen and amulets. The eye of Horus, the scarab, the jet pillar of Osiris, at the end. Priests performed the opening of the mouth. Ceremony, final spell to give the mummy back its breath, its voice, and its senses. This wasn't superstition. This was spiritual engineering. But death was still only the beginning. The soul entered the Duat underworld, a perilous realm of fiery lakes, monstrous guardians, serpent traps, and rivers of night. Each gate demanded a password. Each hour brought new trials to survive. The dead needed guides, texts etched on tomb walls, written on scrolls, or painted on coffins, the pyramid texts for the pharaohs. the coffin texts for nobles, the book of the dead door book of coming forth by day for all who could afford it. These books didn't just describe the afterlife, They gave you tools to navigate it, spells to transform into a falcon, words to breathe in the dark, incantations to prevent your heart from betraying you during judgment. Because at the end of the journey came the most feared moment of all, the weighing of the heart. Inside the hall of two truths, before Osiris, the god of the dead, the soul stood still. Your heart believed to contain your entire conscience was placed on one side of a golden scale. On the other, the feather of Maat, goddess of truth, justice, and harmony. If your heart balanced with the feather, you were declared true of voice. You entered the field of reason, eternal Egypt of joy, where crops never failed and death never returned. But if your heart was heavy with sin, Amet, the devourer, beast with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the backside of a hippo would eat it, and your soul erased. Not punished, unmade, no second chance, no memory, no name. So, how did Egyptians avoid this fate? Through truthful living, yes, but also through Heka, the power of magic. Magic wasn't a trick. It was divine speech, the energy that created and maintained the universe. To speak a spell was to shape reality. To know a name was to gain control. Even the gods obeyed this law. Isis, the goddess of magic, once crafted a serpent from Ra's spit, biting the sun god with venom he couldn't cure. She offered healing only if he told her his true name. When he did, his power passed to her. From that moment on, Isis became the most powerful sorceress in creation. Magic could heal, transform, resurrect. It could bind monsters or make clay statues come to life. It also demanded discipline. Rituals had to be timed with the stars, words spoken without flaw, symbols drawn in the right ink on the right surface, by someone ritually clean. Egypt's houses of life temple libraries guarded these secrets. They trained priests, magicians, healers, and astronomers because to them, all knowledge was sacred. And yet, Egypt was not just a land of gods and books. It was ruled by living deities, the pharaohs. Each king was Horus on earth divine, not symbolic. When he died, he became Osiris, and his heir took the role of Horus anew. This sacred lineage wasn't just myth, it was state theology. Pharaohs maintained Maat through justice, ritual, and temple building. Their crowns, their crooks, and flails, their false beards and sacred names, everything declared them cosmic operators. Even foreign rulers, when Egypt was conquered, adopted this system. They wore Egyptian regalia, worshipped Egyptian gods, built temples for Amun and Isis, because to rule Egypt, you had to be divine, and even the Nif, a pharaoh failed mat, he could be erased from history, chiseled off walls, his name unspoken, his soul lost. Egyptian mythology wasn't just about what happened in the past. It was a living system to explain the how and the why of existence. Why the Nile floods, why the sun returns, why order must be defended, why names must be remembered, and why death is not to be feared. You're ready. Even today, the symbols remain. The eye of Horus for protection, the scarab for rebirth, for life eternal. Because the Egyptians didn't believe in endings. They believed in transformation. They saw the world not as fixed, but fluid, constantly made and remade through knowledge, ritual, and speech. And even now, as we gaze upon the pyramids or walk through the ruins of temples, as we whisper their stories or read their names carved in stone, we take part in that same transformation. We keep the gods alive.